In this installment of the VIP Test Modeler 101 training series, we're going to be going through advanced test coverage. The goal of this session is that by the end you will be able to understand negative testing, be introduced to the concept of filters and tags, and be able to create advanced coverage profiles. Now, the first thing I want to start off with here is going through negative testing. Now, creating models forces you to think about all the possible scenarios of a process or system and all the different journeys you can take through it. Often when people first start modeling, they only think about positive and happy path scenarios. Usually that leads to creating a linear model that only considers happy routes through the system. So here we've got what I would consider a happy model for the login system, where we're going for a valid username, a valid password, and ending up in an authenticated state. Really what we need to be doing is thinking about the negative scenarios. So thinking about things like, what happens when I enter a bad username? What happens when I enter a bad password? And all of the negative scenarios that can happen through this system. And that's where I end up with a much more rich model which covers these negative scenarios. Inside Test Modeler, we have the ability to tag models using filters and features. These are useful for separating the model into different data types. You can tag different logical attributes of the model, or even you could tag the model against different user stories. Then when you create test cases, you simply define the specific levels of coverage you want to apply across the tags within your coverage profile. Test Modeler will then go away and generate the minimum set of paths to maximize that coverage profile. So in terms of how this works in Test Modeler, we're going to go in and overlay some tags on the model. We're then going to create a coverage profile for those tags, and then we're going to create the smallest set of test cases possible which maximize test coverage given the defined profile. So we're going to go into Test Modeler and create 3 more coverage profiles. We're going to create a profile which considers all test cases. We're going to create a profile which only creates positive tests, and then we're going to create a profile which only creates negative tests. So let's jump into Test Modeler and start creating some advanced test coverage. Okay, so we're just back inside Test Modeler now, and the first thing we're going to do is apply some tags across our model. Now to do that, we're going to click on the Filters button under the Test Generation tab. And this time we get a side panel open which allows us to tag the model. If I click on one of the blocks here, so let's click on the authenticated end node, what we'll see is we now have the ability to go in and start tagging. Now we could enter a brand new tag here, so click enter, and we'll see this tag is added. What we're going to do here is we're going to tag this node with a tag already available. We're going to give this valid data tag, and we'll click apply. And we'll see if we flick off and flick back onto this node that this has persisted here, this tag. The other tag we're going to add here is for invalid data, which we're going to tag against the unauthenticated end node here. Now in this case we're only going to add 2 tags, valid and invalid data. We could go across the model here and we could start adding other tags. We could tag between subflows. It's very easy to do that. So we'll click close. And now we're going to create a new coverage profile. So the first profile we're going to generate is for our positive tests. We'll click save. We're going to go into our coverage profile here. We're going to leave this as a medium coverage across the whole model. And I'm going to click reference button. And we'll see against these 2 filters here, we have a 1 next to them. This indicates that each of these filters is used once across the model. So click import. These 2 filters are now available, and we have a drop down next to them where we can specify our own coverage level for this filter. Now because we're going to focus on positive tests, we're going to ignore our invalid data combinations, and we're going to leave this as a high coverage level for our valid data. Click save here. I'm going to click generate. We'll save our model. What we'll see is this has only come back with 1 test case here. Okay. Now if I click on that test, you'll see it's only the happy route here. And that is because we have chosen to ignore our invalid data combinations. If I add another coverage profile here, call this negative tests, Click the coverage button. We'll do the same as before. We'll bring in both of these filters. This time I'm going to ignore my valid data combinations, and I'm going to have a high coverage level across my invalid ones. Click Save, hit Generate. What we'll see now is we get 3 paths here, which only focus on the negative scenarios in our login system. So filters are a really nice way to start being more expressive over the test cases we generate. Obviously here we've only focused on valid and invalid data combinations. The real power here comes when we start tagging much bigger models with features and logical attributes. This allows us to focus our tests on specific facets of the application. Thanks for watching this video. Any questions, please email james.walker@curiosity.software.